I don't ride for nobody, no badge, no crew. Truth don't play favors, it just come through. I don't take sides, I take time and review. Slow to put it, let the context break through. If you clean, that stamp stay true.
What you're seeing before you is the picture of something that you probably would not have thought would happen. A police officer and a young lady, and what looks like just a natural interaction between the two. But what is happening is actually far more dark than anyone could have possibly imagined. Officer Bryant is the one you're looking at, and the young lady that he is with is quite the opposite of an adult. Let's put it like that. She's a younger individual that had put her trust in a police officer, and you would think normally that'd be okay to do. Not in this case. That is young Susanna, and what happened to her, we will go over in this video. Again, viewer discretion is advised because the content of this is quite disturbing.
July 26th, 2022, 9:46 p.m. A surveillance camera at a community center in Georgia captured a seemingly ordinary moment. A 16-year-old girl standing and talking to a man in a police uniform just a few hundred feet from her home. She had no idea she was being watched, and she had no idea that this grainy footage would become the last confirmed sighting of her alive. What happened in the next few minutes would shatter a family, expose a dangerous predator hiding behind a police badge, and prove that sometimes the very people who swore to protect us are the ones we should fear the most.
Now, it's not always the case. Unfortunately, it's becoming too often the case, but it is not right now par for the course. This particular case is nerve-wracking only because it could have been avoided. The problem with what happened is that this individual, the man in the picture here, had been accused of certain things long before this incident. In fact, multiple times people had said that he had been doing things nefariously, stalking and the like, and reported him, and not a single thing was done. One such person was a lady by the name of Alicia Bates, and she had said that she had seen him on her camera walking outside her door, patrolling outside, checking the door to see if it was open. She reported it to the Gwinnett County Police Department. Still nothing was done about him there. And all that happened was this kind of a escalated investigation, but nothing came of it. The man still was allowed to be doing the beat, doing what he's got to do. Second time that happened was another incident. Again, he was reported as a stalker, someone that was being inappropriate, and again, nothing was done. All of this before Susanna disappeared.
Because the person who abducted Susanna that night wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. He was someone the community trusted, someone who patrolled their streets, someone in uniform with a legally carried gun. This is the story of how a police officer became a killer, and how a family's worst nightmare became a community's shocking reality. Earlier that day, Susanna Morales had done what any 16-year-old would do on a summer evening. She'd told her mother she was going to visit one friend, then changed plans and went to see another, instead perfectly normal teenage behavior that would later take on tragic significance.
Word of advice, kids, don't do that. It's not that we're trying to be controlling. In your mind, I get that that's what you might think, but it is a safety measure. And if you care about your parents, you'd want them to know where you are so that you don't, one, stress them out, and two, don't put them in a position to have to discipline. Her telling her parents she's going one place and then goes to another, now the parent has no idea where they are. Unless, of course, they have some sort of a tracking, but you can't be banking on that. Just be honest with your parents. People, just tell them, let them know for your own safety.
The young girl with the bright smile and love for singing had spent the evening at Sterling Glen Apartments, a complex in Norcross, Georgia, just outside Atlanta. Susanna was the baby of her family, adored by everyone who knew her. She spent hours practicing makeup tutorials in her room, had recently picked up the ukulele, and filled the house with her singing voice. Her mother would later describe how Susanna's music made their home feel alive with joy. That Tuesday evening seemed no different from countless others. Around 10 p.m., Susanna began her walk home, a short trek of maybe half a mile along roads she knew well. Her phone, equipped with the Life 360 tracking application, showed her location in real time to family members who wanted to keep her safe. But safety was about to become an illusion. At exactly 9:46 p.m., the community center camera captured Susanna walking along the roadside. Unaware that predatory eyes were watching her every step, she appeared calm, unhurried, just a teenager heading home after spending time with friends. Then, something went terribly wrong. What happened next would puzzle investigators for months. Susanna's phone showed her reaching her neighborhood, getting close to home where she should have felt safest. Her family, monitoring her location, watched as the familiar blue dot approached their street. Then the dot began moving in the opposite direction.
Now, I have Live 360, and it is quite a phenomenal app. As long as you have your phone, and that if the phone is gone, then you're kind of on a wild goose chase. This must have been nerve-wracking for them, considering that they did indeed see something one way and then it started to change direction. It could only mean one thing, that she just wasn't going to come home. Now, if the child is known for changing plans, maybe not as much fear set in, considering that she might have been like, oh, she got a phone call and was going backwards to do something else. That might have been the case. Did they go check? I don't know. But maybe now they're feeling a little bit of guilt for not being more proactive about what they were seeing.
At first, the movement seemed normal walking speed. Perhaps she'd forgotten something or decided to take a different route.
So I thought.
But then the impossible happened. According to the GPS data, Susanna was suddenly traveling at 40 miles per hour. She didn't drive, she didn't have a car, and nobody in her family was expecting to pick her up. A text message appeared on her phone. I'm on my way home, but Susanna never arrived. Instead, her phone continued its high-speed journey away from safety, away from home, away from everything familiar. At 10:30 p.m., one of her friends received a crash alert from the Life 360 application. The phone had stopped moving. It would never move again. Susanna's family began searching immediately, driving the streets, calling her name, hoping against hope that this was all some terrible misunderstanding.
Now, to give a little bit of context before we get too far ahead into the story, I want to give a little bit of a background into the individual that you saw at the beginning of the video. That man, Officer Bryant, he had a history of a pattern of behavior. Everything from breaking into homes and attempting robberies, stealing personal intimate items, and again, all of this known and unchecked. That's going to be the running theme, as you're going to see with this individual. And as to why he was never checked, that should be the number one question for everyone involved in this case.
But when dawn broke on July 27th, their daughter was gone. Meanwhile, just a few miles away at Sterling Glen Apartments, a 22-year-old police officer named Miles Bryant was going about his evening routine. Bryant worked as a courtesy officer at the complex, a position that gave him reduced rent in exchange for patrolling the property and keeping residents safe. He was also a sworn officer with the Doraville Police Department and served in the National Guard. To his neighbors, his colleagues, his superiors, Miles Bryant appeared to be exactly what law enforcement should represent: dedicated, conscientious, always willing to help.
I'm going to say this. Something just, it might be a tainted viewpoint because I know what happened, but something doesn't look right about him. Something doesn't look right. He was fighting something else other than just this patrol business.
But appearances can be devastatingly deceiving. The next morning, July 27th, Bryant contacted police with a concerning report. His service weapon, a Glock 19 pistol, had been stolen from his vehicle. Someone had broken into his truck overnight, he claimed, taking his holster and gun while leaving everything else untouched. The timing was remarkable. Less than 12 hours after Susanna Morales vanished, the courtesy officer who lived at the very apartment complex she'd been visiting was reporting a stolen firearm. But this was just the beginning of Miles Bryant's elaborate deception. For Susanna's family, the next 6 months were a living nightmare of uncertainty. Tips poured in from across the country, reported sightings in Detroit, Nashville, Gatlinburg. Each lead brought hope, then crushing disappointment when investigations turned up nothing. Police deployed drones, thermal imaging, and aerial surveillance. They conducted undercover operations, worried that Susanna might have been taken into human trafficking networks.
Well, perhaps she might have been actually done just that, just not by the cartels or any one of those people. And now again, we're linking back to this individual, the man in question. This particular statement of my gun was stolen, to their point, quite, convenient that you got your gun stolen, and what might have happened to Susanna might have been linked to that. So that might be the reason his gun got stolen. But please also remember, this is the same guy, as we said, multiple people knew, including the department, that he had issues. It's not like if he tells you my gun is stolen, that you think for sure it's got to be stolen. That should have been the number one red flag, considering the location that he was patrolling, the statement he made about the gun being stolen, and the history he has of doing the things he did. You would think that he would have been prime suspect number one. Unfortunately, he was not.
Every resource was exhausted, every possibility explored. Her mother, Aura Morales, faced the worst kind of anguish, not knowing. Was her daughter dead? Was she suffering somewhere? Was she trying to come home? The questions haunted every waking moment and invaded every dream. It is the worst possible thing to not have closure, investigators would later observe. I think my daughter may be alive. I hope my daughter is alive, but I don't know. Emotionally debilitating is not the right two words to use. It's worse than that. Throughout those 6 months, Miles Bryant continued his duties as courtesy officer and police officer. He patrolled Sterling Glen Apartments, the very place where Susanna had last been seen. He carried himself with the same professional demeanor that had earned him respect among colleagues. No one suspected that the person helping search for the missing girl might be the very person who knew exactly where she was.
To me, that's just wild. That is off the chain crazy. That you don't. Okay, maybe I'm just again, it might be the bias. What kind of questions would they ask him, considering the history? And why is it that you didn't ask certain questions considering the history? That is my big, and why put him on this case after telling you what happened with his gun? How did that not get ran down the rabbit hole even deeper?
February 6th, 2023, 6 o'clock in the evening. An off-road enthusiast was exploring remote areas near Drowning Creek Road and Highway 316 in Decatur, Georgia, more than 20 miles from where Susanna had disappeared. What he found changed everything. The victim's remains, tragically decomposed, found across the forest floor. No clothing, no fibers, no forensic evidence remained. Just the evidence of time passed in the Georgia wilderness.
Wow.
The medical examiner would later determine that approximately 95% of Susanna's remains were recovered, but several parts were missing, and without soft tissue, determining cause of death proved impossible. The lack of clothing indicated foul play. People don't simply die without clothing in remote woods without criminal involvement. For investigators, the discovery was both heartbreaking and challenging. They finally had answers for Susanna's family, but they also had a homicide case with precious little physical evidence to work with. That's when they made a discovery that would crack the case wide open.
She was gone almost a year. From the time that she went missing to when this body was discovered, it was almost a year. Man.
About 100 feet from Susanna's remains, investigators found something that should never have been there. A Glock 19 pistol, abandoned on the forest floor. It hadn't been buried or hidden. It looked like it had simply been dropped and forgotten. When they traced the serial number, the results were shocking.
His gun.
This was the same weapon Miles Bryant had reported stolen on July 27th, the day after Susanna disappeared. The same gun that had supposedly been taken from his truck by unknown criminals was now sitting in the woods where a murdered teenager had been found.
Now, timeline-wise, let's figure this out. If he reported it the day after, that would mean that he wouldn't have seen it the night before, or if he saw it the night before, it would have had to have been earlier than when she went missing. How he didn't know that it went missing that night, when did it get stolen, and how come only in the morning did he show any proof that the car had been broken into, or was he just stating that, and just like before, ain't nobody checking on me, I can just tell them what I want and they're gonna believe me because I have a stellar record. Like I said, I don't know how you didn't ask the guy, where would show us the truck, send us some pictures, where was the gun? Why would you leave your service weapon in your rig? None of those questions decided that no, that all right.
The odds of this being a coincidence were astronomical. Investigators immediately focused on the courtesy officer, who had seemed so helpful, so concerned, so professional throughout the search for Susanna. They were about to discover that Miles Bryant had been playing an elaborate game of deception from the very beginning. Detective Carter approached Bryant carefully. They needed him to talk, to explain the inexplicable connection between his weapon and the crime scene. But they also had to be strategic. Revealing too much too soon could cause him to stop cooperating entirely. Bryant agreed to come to the station for what he believed was a routine interview about his role as courtesy officer. He had no idea that investigators had already begun unraveling his carefully constructed lies. "We're literally talking to everyone here," Detective Carter explained casually. "We're just trying to document everything. We got no leads, man. Hopefully with your being in the know, with everything going on with the complex, we can maybe put some pieces together." Bryant played his part perfectly at first.
That's a very good strategy, I might add. Make them feel useful. Make them feel like they're not the topic of the discussion. You just need to tell us because we can find somebody. You tell us where to go. Tell us what you saw. Tell us what you know. Help us out with this, man, because we have no idea where to go. His main character syndrome might pop out.
Suggesting various theories about who might have taken Susanna. He pointed to gang members, transients, suspicious characters who frequented the apartment complex. He seemed eager to help, concerned about the missing girl, frustrated by the lack of progress in the case. But investigators were watching for something else entirely, the subtle signs that would reveal when Bryant shifted
Body
from
language.
helpful witness to desperate suspect. While Bryant maintained his facade of innocence, Detective Carter was methodically analyzing phone records that would ultimately destroy every lie the officer had told.
Can I ask everybody a question who might be watching this? Why does it take an absolute tragedy for people to do their damn jobs? I think it's a pretty simple question, right? Why would it take something like this happening for you to take seriously other people's allegations of this idiot? You could have probably saved this young girl's life had you just paid attention to what they were telling you. Other women were telling you, multiple women were telling you about this individual. Man.
Bryant carried 2 phones, his personal device, and a work phone issued by the Doraville Police Department. Both phones created digital footprints that could be tracked through cell tower data, painting a precise picture of his movements on the night Susanna disappeared. What investigators found was devastating to Bryant's claims of innocence. Between 1 and 2 a.m. on July 27th, just hours after Susanna vanished, Bryant's phones were actively making calls from cell towers located near Highway 316 in Decatur, the same stretch of woods where Susanna's body would be discovered 6 months later. Bryant had told investigators he spent that night driving around after arguing with his girlfriend, never mentioning any trip to remote woods 20 miles away. But the phone records didn't lie. His device was in the exact location where a murdered girl's remains would later be found. When confronted with this evidence, Bryant's carefully maintained composure began to crack. "Listen to me," Detective Carter said, his voice steady but firm. "Your device was the only one out there. She went missing. She died there. Your gun is there. Your phone is there. This is your moment to talk about it." For the first time, Miles Bryant looked genuinely rattled. The helpful courtesy officer facade dropped away, revealing something much darker underneath. "This is terrible," he whispered. "Maybe we're a monster." "Oh, hell no. Prove it wrong." But the evidence was overwhelming.
The only the more I hear about stories like this, the less inclined I am to believe that, one, individuals like this have a conscience, and two, that certain penalties are just not sufficient. Yeah, certain penalties for certain crimes are way below the bar. They need to be upped. Here's why I say that. He pretends to be a protector. He then turns from protector to damaging person, from damaging person to murderer, from murderer to hiding and helping find something that he knows doesn't exist. Whew, my goodness.
Bryant's own digital footprint had placed him at the crime scene. His weapon was found near the victim's remains. His story about the stolen gun fell apart under scrutiny. Most damning of all, investigators discovered that Bryant had lied about never having seen Susanna before. Witness testimony revealed that he had actually approached Susanna and her friends previously, offering them rides in his black truck encounters he had steadfastly denied during questioning. If I killed somebody, I would know that, Bryant protested, but his protests rang hollow against the mounting evidence.
First of all, who says that? What sane person, if I kill somebody, I would know that? No shit, Sherlock. You don't think you'd know if you killed somebody? Or you're sleepwalking? Do they not realize that the stupid stuff they say matches the stupidity of their actions, and it's kind of easy to figure it out? God.
The case was far from over, though. Phone records and circumstantial evidence could place Bryant at the scene, but proving murder without a definitive cause of death would require prosecutors to paint a complete picture of who Miles Bryant really was beneath his badge. As investigators dug deeper into Bryant's background, a disturbing pattern emerged.
There you go.
The helpful police officer had been living a double life for years, preying on vulnerable women while hiding behind his uniform in position of trust. Dating back to 2018, Bryant had begun burglarizing homes belonging to his high school classmates, specifically targeting young women. He would steal private items, personal belongings, anything that satisfied his twisted compulsions. Even after Susanna's murder, his behavior escalated. Surveillance footage showed him attempting to break into a young woman's apartment while wearing his National Guard fatigues, trying to force open her door despite her obvious fear and resistance.
You got to give me a little bit. You got to give me a little bit here. There's a part of me that's fighting a wee bit of rage. I'm not gonna lie, fighting a wee bit of rage that the authorities that were reported to did nothing. Man, look, when I tell you. Now, the family sued him. Okay, I just want you to put that out there before we go any further. There's a lawsuit happening. But I had to put that out because, you know what? I would have done worse. So they're doing better. They did one step better. At least they took it to the courts. Whew.
During searches of his digital devices, investigators found evidence that he had been using women's phones to send illicit content to himself, a violation of privacy that revealed his predatory mindset.
That's wild.
The evidence painted a picture of someone who had been building toward violence for years, someone who used his authority and access to target victims, who trusted his badge. But would a jury believe that this decorated officer, this National Guard member with commendations and positive performance reviews, was capable of kidnapping and murder? June 5th, 2024. Almost 2 years after Susana Morales was taken from her family, Miles Bryant faced a jury of his peers in a Georgia courtroom. He was supposed to serve and protect, the prosecutor told jurors during opening arguments. He is one of the people that we should trust to enforce the law, somebody we should hold to a higher standard, but he didn't do any of those things. Instead, he abused the law, and he used his badge, and he used his position to satisfy his own predatory impulses.
Now, I have to wonder now if this video that they're showing is AI. The reason I ask that is because of how crystal clear it is. I have to wonder if it's AI and her not really watching him, if they just kind of recreated this to say, you know, because if they have this footage, they wouldn't need to ask him diddly squat, would they? They did have it. They'd have the facts of the matter. So this kind of strikes me as odd.
The prosecution's case was built on circumstantial evidence, but it was overwhelming in its totality. Phone records placed Bryant at the crime scene. His weapon was found near the victim's remains. Witness testimony proved he had lied about never encountering Susanna before. Most powerfully, they presented evidence of his pattern of predatory behavior, the burglaries, the attempted break-ins, the escalating violence that had culminated in murder. He is a cop who turned into a killer, prosecutors argued. The defense faced an uphill battle. Their strategy focused on the lack of direct physical evidence, no DNA linking Bryant to Susanna, no definitive cause of death, no eyewitness to the actual crime. You don't have to like my client, defense attorney admitted to jurors. And in fact, at the conclusion of this trial, you're going to think that he is the most callous, uncaring coward that you have ever seen. However, he is not guilty. They suggested alternative theories. Perhaps Susanna had overdosed. Perhaps she had been killed by someone else who coincidentally dumped her body near Bryant's gun. But these theories lacked evidence and credibility.
How? Look, I understand they got to defend their guy, but how in the hell your theory is that they just happened to dump the body right next nearby where the stolen gun from that guy would have been, and he just, hey boy, look, man, I wonder if these attorneys have like a conscience problem when they go home with things like this. I get that you might have to do it. Man, look, wow.
The defense also attempted to portray Susanna as a troubled teenager who might have put herself in dangerous situations, but her friends and family testified that she was a normal 16-year-old who had been safely walking home from a routine visit with friends. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Kidnapping. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Miles Bryant was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The jury had seen through his lies and recognized him for what he truly was, a predator who had used his badge as a hunting license. For Susanna's family, the verdict brought some measure of justice, but it could never bring back their beloved daughter and sister.
They have since filed a lawsuit, and the lawsuit claims to be around the negligent portion of the committees around him, those who had seen foreseeable problems and they did nothing about it, like we had discussed, the multiple people that came forward saying this man did indeed do this. You have him on film doing this, and they did nothing. That his predatory behavior was enabled by the actions that they didn't take on Mr. Bryant. If this is the kind of things that they've allowed one person, it might be allowing for other people, especially if people have told you his contingency plan to get what he wanted was to do exactly what he did to Susanna. Now, if this lawsuit goes through, they have some grounds for it, considering that he was indeed found guilty. And the records might be showing that he had been, of course, seen doing other things close to it that would lead people to believe that there would be time for him to not just grow in his instability, but act on his instability. This particular story has a lot to unpack to it, because when you look at the grand scheme of things, this girl could have been saved. This girl could have been saved if the authorities had done their damn job. Let's see what else they got to say. Maybe they might go a little bit deeper into the lawsuit.
I knew at that moment that we got him, Detective Carter reflected. We had done our job. No one's above the law, and he got what he deserved. But the case raised disturbing questions about how someone like Miles Bryant had been able to operate for so long without detection. How had his department missed the warning signs? How had the apartment complex failed to properly screen their courtesy officer? Susanna's family has filed a civil lawsuit against Sterling Glen Apartments, arguing that they should have conducted more thorough background checks before giving Bryant access to vulnerable residents. Their battle for accountability continues, driven by their determination to prevent other families from experiencing their devastating loss. The murder of Susanna Morales exposed uncomfortable truths about predators who hide behind positions of authority. Miles Bryant wasn't some shadowy stranger lurking in alleys. He was someone the community trusted, someone who wore a uniform and carried a badge, someone who had sworn an oath to protect and serve. His crimes remind us that evil can wear any face, carry any credentials, and hide behind any institution. The very qualities that should make someone trustworthy: authority, access, community respect, can become weapons in the hands of those who abuse them. For law enforcement agencies, Bryant's case serves as a stark reminder of the importance of thorough background checks, ongoing psychological evaluation, and vigilant supervision of officers. One bad actor doesn't just destroy lives, they undermine public trust in all the good officers who genuinely serve their communities with honor.
And that is true. That is 100% true. And if things had been taken seriously, especially the fact that on ring cams he had been caught, and this is all by the facility because everything is being run. If you say you have a facility and you have the ability to have a safety officer and you're monitoring things and people come to you and tell you and you can visually see, you are responsible for this. 100% responsible for, one, at minimum, not removing him from that role. And then secondarily, reporting him to another authority to have him arrested for what he had done. At minimum, even if all you did was tell him you can't live here no more, not even allow you to pay rent, half rent, no rent at all, you leave, do not come back. They didn't do that. No precautions were made. His predatory behaviors were seen, acknowledged, and never, ever, ever was anything done to change it. There was no crack to fall through. This was a chasm. And at the end of the day, Susana Morales died because one person decided to take her life and multiple people decided to do nothing about that one person. The why, we may never know, but we do know that this individual did what they did. And one person lost their life for it, and people could have stopped it. Word to the wise, if you see something, say something. Kids, please let your family know where you're going. If at all possible, and you don't drive, have them take you. Just stay safe for your own sake, yes. But for the sake of those that you say you love as well. Because you could be the next victim. And it might be somebody you think you should trust and you should not be trusting. When we know more of the lawsuit, we'll let you guys in on it. As of now, I haven't heard any real updates as to whether they've won. Has it gone to discovery or anything like that? But as soon as we know, we'll let you know. And our condolences to Susanna's family.
One wrong move turn the present into the past. I don't ride for nobody, no badge, no crew. Truth don't play favors, it just come through. I don't take sides, I take time and review. So to put it, let the context break through. If you clean, that stamp stay true. If you foul, that show up too. No miss, no spin, no cover up hype. Everything judge and play.